On today's episode of Locked On Oilers, a preview of the final Battle of Alberta of the year, just how important the rest of the year is for the Edmonton Oilers, and our ghost of Oilers past. All that much more in today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I am your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to start off with the final Battle of Alberta of the year, not only of the year, but of the season as well. I don't get it, but either way, the third and final installment of the Battle of Alberta goes tonight, so we will talk about that in just a second. But also on today's episode, just how important is this mini stretch to end 2022? Well, it may be a little more important than you think. We will talk about that a little later on. And to wrap up today's episode, no, I'm not Scrooge, but I am bringing you a ghost of Oilers past, as this one, we all love a nice little story around the holiday season, and this one sure is a story, as this ghost of Oilers past changed his nationality recently to play in the Olympics. Yes, there's your little hint for today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Alrighty, let's get started today with the Battle of Alberta, as the third and final installment of the 2022-2023 season of the Battle of Alberta is tonight, as the Oilers travel to Calgary for the game. I don't get why it has to be in Calgary. I thought since the Oilers won the playoffs last year, we got home ice advantage. What is this? What? Either way, the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames face off in the first game since the Christmas break and since the Edmonton Oilers' disappointing loss on Friday as well. But we move past, and so do the Edmonton Oilers. However, their lineup doesn't, as the Edmonton Oilers go with the exact same lineup they went with against the Vancouver Canucks, as Zach Hyman lines up next to Connor McDavid and Jesse Puljujarvi. Warren Foegele will be alongside Leon Draisaitl and Kyler Yamamoto. Matthias Janmark on the third line alongside Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Klim Kostin. And Dylan Holloway, Ryan McLeod, and Derek Ryan make up your fourth line for the Edmonton Oilers. Now on the back end for the Oilers, the back end stays the same as always. Darnell Nurse alongside Cody Ceci. Brett Kulak starts alongside Tyson Barrie. Marcus Niemelainen and Evan Bouchard make up the third pairing. And starting in goal as far as right now, who had the starting net in practice today, Stuart Skinner for the Oilers. Now, again, the second straight game for the Edmonton Oilers where they are able to have that spine of the team with McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, and McLeod. So we will see now and get a better understanding of how the Edmonton Oilers want to deploy their lines. Yes, the Edmonton Oilers are still missing Evander Kane, but for the most part, this is what the forward core will look like. My question being, once Evander Kane comes back, who's out of the lineup? Klim Kostin's played too well to get out of the Oilers lineup, as well as the third line in general with Janmark and Nugent-Hopkins. Can't take out Derek Ryan. Does Dylan Holloway then get some time back in the AHL, get more minutes? Either way, that is a question for future us. Present us now have to watch the Edmonton Oilers face off against the Calgary Flames, who have just now passed the Edmonton Oilers in the standings, and the Edmonton Oilers and the Edmonton Oilers fans have had to sit with that since Friday. Now, The lineup for the Calgary Flames on the flip side is kind of interesting, as Dylan Dubé starts off on the first line alongside Elias Lindholm and Tyler Toffoli. Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri will be together on the second line, as former Edmonton Oiler Milan Lucic will be on the second line with them. Oh, the days where Milan Lucic could actually play on a second line. Either way, Andrew Mangiapane, Michael Backlund, and Blake Coleman make up the third line, and Trevor Lewis, Adam Ruzicka, and Brett Ritchie make up the fourth line for the Flames. Now, the one constant for the Flames so far this year, their defense, as Noah Hannafin and Anderson will make up their top pairing. Mackenzie Weegar and Chris Tanev will be the second pairing, and probably the pairing that we see the most against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers tonight. And Nikita Zadorov and Michael Stone will make up the third pairing, as Jacob Markstrom will get the start against the Edmonton Oilers tonight. Very interesting, considering Markstrom hasn't been too hot against the Edmonton Oilers since becoming a Calgary Flame, especially since the playoffs last year. Is, well, the first meeting this year, the Flames decided, Dan Vladar, how's it going? The Edmonton Oilers may have a little bit of an advantage on the Calgary Flames when it comes to Jacob Markstrom. As, to be honest with you, Stuart Skinner has played well in the games that he's played against the Calgary Flames so far, so maybe not so much of the same story on the Calgary Flames side, but we shall see. Now, a couple of interesting notes to talk about when it comes to the teams here. As everybody knows the special teams of it, the Edmonton Oilers with the best power play in the league. The Calgary Flames have the 23rd best power play in the league. And the Edmonton Oilers penalty kill, as of late, has been a little better. Yes, the Edmonton Oilers penalty kill currently sits at 26th in the league, but at times has reached 30th, 31st. And heck, I'm surprised it hasn't been last if it wasn't for those Anaheim Ducks. But either way, the Edmonton Oilers have been on the up and up on the power play, or on the penalty kill, excuse me. Could that come into the Oilers' advantage? Now, a couple of other things I want to bring up before we move on here is the shots against per game. As we all know, the Edmonton Oilers have been a little floppy when it comes to shots against every game, but the Calgary Flames haven't. The Calgary Flames are one of the best teams when it comes to shot attempts against per game. The Edmonton Oilers coming into this game sit 22nd in the league when it comes to shots against per game with 32.5. Where the Calgary Flames are coming in with the fourth best shots against per game at 28.2. That may be an issue for the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers are a team that, well, again, as mentioned, are not exactly keen to block shots, prevent shots. They're a team that allows their goaltender to see and face a lot of shots. And the Calgary Flames, on the other hand, are a team who doesn't do that. And the Edmonton Oilers aren't that great when it comes to shots per game. If the Flames are able to limit the amount of shots the Oilers have against the Flames, they'll be in pretty hard against the Flames. But if the Edmonton Oilers are able to pepper Markstrom with those shots, and within those, if they are able to keep them to under 28 shots, fair enough. But if they are able to have quality shots, it may be a different story for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the final thing I want to bring up is the goals per period. Because we all know the Edmonton Oilers haven't been fantastic at starting off games, at scoring the first goal, heck, even at leading going into periods. Against the Vancouver Canucks, they were leading after the first period. Everything seemed pretty hunky-dory, but we all know how that finished. But when it comes to the goals per period, the Edmonton Oilers have a massive advantage over the Calgary Flames, except in one period. And that is the first period. In the first period, the Vancouver Canucks, the Calgary Flames have scored 40 first period goals so far this year. The Edmonton Oilers have scored 29. The Edmonton Oilers are 18th in the league, and the Calgary Flames are first when it comes to scoring goals in the first period. But in the second and third period, the Edmonton Oilers have scored 47 second period goals so far this year and 48 third period goals so far this year. The Edmonton Oilers sit first when it comes to second period goals and second behind only the Dallas Stars, the Central Division leaders, by the way, when it comes to goals in the third period. The Calgary Flames, on the other hand, have 34 second period goals, which is good for 23rd in the league, and 33 third period goals, which is good for 26th in the NHL. So, we all know how the Edmonton Oilers do in the first period. They're a little lackadaisical, and on the flip side, the Calgary Flames are very good in the first period. So, if the Edmonton Oilers are going into the second period, into the first intermission, down, don't count them out just yet, as the Edmonton Oilers have almost doubled the amount of goals the Calgary Flames have scored in the second and third period so far this year. A little bit of food for thought. Either way, the Edmonton Oilers head to Calgary as puck drop at the Saddle Dome is 7 o'clock. A massive, massive game within the division, and it may be a little more important than you think. Why? We will talk about that in just a second, but first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. I'm talking pro football, college bowl season, basketball, and yes, the World Cup is over, but the Premier League is just getting started. Manchester United just with a massive 3-0 win today. Chelsea with a 2-0 win today. And who would have thought all of that could have happened on your BetOnline slip? Come on, guys, think it through. Either way, if you love sports podcasts, which if you're listening to this one, you probably do, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty, on to this final stretch for the Edmonton Oilers to wrap up 2022. And this stretch may be a little more important than you think, as the Edmonton Oilers currently sit 5th in the division, 1 point behind the Calgary Flames, who currently hold the final wild card spot. They do sit 2 points behind the Seattle Kraken. They sit 6 points behind the LA Kings and country mile behind the Vegas Golden Knights, who have 49 points. The Oilers have 38. Now, the top of the division, yes, it may be 11 points out of touch. It isn't out of reach for the Edmonton Oilers yet. But second place is certainly not out of reach for the Edmonton Oilers. And this may be the time for the Edmonton Oilers to make up their ground. To end the year, the Edmonton Oilers play the Calgary Flames tonight, the Seattle Kraken on Friday, and then the Winnipeg Jets on New Year's Eve. New York Jets, a very difficult game and potentially a huge measuring stick for the Edmonton Oilers, who will finally have their spine of their team with McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, and McLeod. But the more important games come against the Flames and the Kraken. As the Flames and the Kraken are the two teams who currently sit ahead of the Edmonton Oilers in the division and only sit above the Edmonton Oilers technically by a game, only by 2 points. The Edmonton Oilers win tonight against the Flames, they would go even with the Seattle Kraken on points with 40. And then, if the Edmonton Oilers were able to beat the Seattle Kraken the following night, on Friday night, then the Edmonton Oilers would go 2 points clear of the Seattle Kraken, 3 points clear of the Calgary Flames, and would sit third in the division for the Edmonton Oilers. Then next would be the Kings, then next would be the Golden Knights. But here's why this time is so important. Because every team ahead of the Edmonton Oilers in the division right now currently have at least one game against a fellow Pacific Division rival, if not two. As mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers play the Flames tonight, the Seattle Kraken on Friday, and the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday. The Vegas Golden Knights play the LA Kings tonight, the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow night, who is a Pacific Division, I'll put rival for now, but is in the Pacific Division, so all points stay within the division, and then have the Nashville Predators on Saturday. The LA Kings have the Vegas Golden Knights tonight, the Colorado Avalanche on Thursday, and the Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday. The Kraken have the Flames tomorrow night, and then the Oilers on Friday to wrap up their 2022. And then the Flames have the Oilers tonight, the Kraken tomorrow, and the Canucks on Saturday. So of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 games that are being played by the top five teams in the Pacific Division. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those 14 games are played between two Pacific Division rivals. 10 of those 14 games have all 2 points decided and kept within the division. The Edmonton Oilers can come out of the rest of the year with 4 of a possible 4 points given to them within the division, and then they can go on and potentially beat the Jets, or at least play the Jets on Saturday, who is a very good team and measures the rest of the season for the Edmonton Oilers and lets them know where they currently are against real competitors and contenders for the Stanley Cup championship, Stanley Cup title. But this is where you have to start looking at the scoreboard if you're the Edmonton Oilers or an Edmonton Oilers fan. Because now the Oilers are out of a playoff spot. Now is the time where the other teams around the division, their outcomes matter. We're past the development stage. We're past the evaluation stage. We are now at the stage of the season where things have to get done. And it starts tonight against the Calgary Flames, who is in your division, who is your biggest rival, who you don't play again this year. Again, you don't play them ever again this year unless you play them in the playoffs. But you have to get to those playoffs first. And currently, right now, it looks like either the Edmonton Oilers or the Calgary Flames will not be in the playoffs. So are you going to be that team who's going to make the playoffs, or are you going to let your provincial, not only division rival, provincial rival, make the playoffs over you? That is where the Edmonton Oilers are at this year. Right now. Not this year. That is where the Edmonton Oilers are at right now. And it starts tonight. As mentioned, the Calgary Flames, to wrap up the Edmonton Oilers year, the Calgary Flames tonight in Calgary, then Seattle, and to wrap up the year, the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg. Hey, you go out, have some fun, enjoy the night. I don't know if I can endorse that, but either way, enjoy your night as the Edmonton Oilers wrap up their 2022 campaign. Let's wrap up our show today with a little bit of Ghost of Oilers Past. And this one, you may not remember the name initially. It was an early 2000s draft pick for the Edmonton Oilers. Only played a select amount of games for the Edmonton Oilers. But it's his story that's worth talking about, especially after the NHL. We will talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen today. Now for your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less. Plus instant game reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts. Alrighty, let's wrap up today's episode with the Ghost of Oilers Past. Kind of fitting because the Christmas just came, and if you're Scrooge, you probably got visited by Ghost of Christmas Past. But the Ghost of Oilers Past, this one's a little fun. As mentioned, you may not recognize the name as this guy only played 17 games as an Edmonton Oiler, but was in the Edmonton Oilers organization for a long time as the Edmonton Oilers drafted Brian Young. In 2004, he was selected in the 5th round, 146th overall. And as mentioned, it's not the NHL career that matters. It's the career that came after the NHL. So as mentioned, the Oilers draft him in 2004. He mostly spends his time down in the AHL until 2006, 2007, when the Edmonton Oilers finally called Brian Young up to the NHL, and he'd get into 15 games in the 06-07 season. However, the following year in 2007-2008 would only play in 2 games for the Edmonton Oilers, mostly because of injuries, and would end up being mostly playing that year with the Springfield Falcons, shout out the Springfield Falcons, or the Stockton Thunder in the ECHL. Again, as mentioned, 17 games played for Young in the NHL. No goals, no assists, no points. Had a total of 10 penalty minutes in the NHL and a career -9. However, in the AHL, in 176 games, 3 goals, 15 assists, 18 points. And then in the ECHL, 62 games, 4 goals, 11 assists, 15 points. But Brian Young is sitting there in June of 2010, realizing that the Edmonton Oilers aren't going to bring him back for another year. It seems like there's not really much of an opportunity for Brian Young in North America. So Brian Young decides what most hockey players end up deciding at some point in their career. They're going to leave North America. But he didn't go to Europe. No. He didn't go to Russia. He didn't go to Sweden. He didn't go to England in the EIHL. And he didn't go play in Turkey. I don't know if Turkey has a hockey team. Hockey league. No. What did Brian Young do in June of 2010? Brian Young would sign a 1-year deal with High One of the Asian Hockey League in Seoul, South Korea. Yeah, that's right. He would start off playing. He started with a 1-year contract at High One, exactly how it sounds, HIGH1 in the Asian Hockey League, the ALH, the AHL. But their abbreviation is the ALH. I don't know why, but either way, the Asian Hockey League, the ALH. He would then go on to play not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 years with High One of the Asian Hockey League in Seoul, South Korea, and would eventually, on January 21st, 2014, Brian Young would become a South Korean citizen. Yes, a citizen. That means that in 2018, when the Olympics came around, Brian Young suited up at the Olympics for South Korea. From a small town in Ontario, Brian Young suiting up for his citizenship, South Korea. He would then, that year in 2017, 2018, he would then sign with the Daimyoung Killer Whales. Excuse me if I am saying that wrong, which I'm sure I am. And he's been playing there ever since. Now, the last bit of his stats has finished in 2019, 2020. However, of all accounts that I've found so far, he's still currently an active hockey player. He's 36 years old and played 3 seasons with Daimyoung Killer Whales in the Asian Hockey League, also in South Korea, or also in Seoul, South Korea, I should say. So far in his South Korean hockey career, he played 262 games along with the High One in Seoul. 39 goals, 148 assists, a season that even included 42 assists one year for Brian Young. He finished with 187 points with High One. And then so far with Daimyoung, 91 games played, 3 goals, 17 assists, 20 points. All told in the Asian Hockey League, 353 games played, 42 goals, 165 assists, 207 points, and a solid 608 penalty minutes. As mentioned, as every account I can find, he is still currently an active hockey player. Not sure if he's still in South Korea or what, but either way, if you do end up stumbling upon the Daimyoung Killer Whales roster page, Brian Young is still the number 1 liked player on that roster, and liked as in like Facebook likes. That's how old this team or this whole situation is. Either way, your Ghosts of Oilers past Brian Young. Either way, the Edmonton Oilers play once again and get started in Calgary in the Battle of Alberta, the final Battle of Alberta of the 2022-2023 season, so better make the most of it. A 7 o'clock puck drop in Calgary. We will not have an episode tomorrow as it is my birthday, so I'm taking tomorrow off, but we will be back on Thursday. Either way, I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, not save. Stay safe. I hope you have had a wonderful holidays, and we shall talk to you later. Hopefully at the end of this Battle of Alberta, we can play La Bamba, baby.